Okay, today we're looking at the truth about karma. Do we need the extra baggage? And I tagged it with that question because we often think of karma as something that we might carry over from another life. And I guess if you can't find something wrong or something that you're doing in this life, so you could blame your problems on something that happened in another life. I don't know that we need that extra baggage to think in that way, but it's kind of interesting because there are people that do that they tend to get more away from Western religious concepts and pick up on things like karma. And what we're trying to do, I think, is explain why life looks like it does. And in some schools of thought, karma will fit the bill. But the karma question is, does karma factor into the way our life unfolds? I think that's what we want to know. Should we think of negative conditions as karmic payback for something negative we may have done in the past? So that's really kind of the question. And again, there are people that, and I can't say I was taught to think this way, but it came up enough where you might think that if there's something that you're dealing with in this life that you haven't worked out, it could be a carryover from a past life. And actually, some of the research they do with children who have memories of past lives, a very fascinating study. Jim Tucker of the University of Virginia is kind of leading that charge right now. But they point out that children that begin to remember a past life usually have had a traumatic death. And one of the last stories that I was reading about had to do with a boy that believed he was in one of the Twin Towers during 9/11 when the plane hit. He recalled that he was thrown out of the building to the ground. He was on the 79th floor, so obviously didn't survive that. But having never been to New York, this little 3-year-old boy was remembering these things. And they say that most of us don't remember things because the death that we went through probably was not traumatic. And so it would make sense that you might feel if that happened, if you as a child begin having memories like this. And we're not talking about just memories, we're talking about nightmares. We're talking about a whole change of behavior and describing people. This little boy actually gave the name of the person that he was that was killed in the 9/11 incident. But the cases that Jim Tucker follows up on are cases that he can verify. When a kid starts talking about something, he can go back into their where they're talking about, whatever town they name, whatever village they talk about, or whatever, and go back and verify. And they've got several thousand cases where this has been verified, been proven true. But I'm not so concerned about that myself. I believe that I have lived before. I have no recollection whatsoever. And whatever I brought over, if anything, there's enough in this life to deal with rather than have to think of anything that we may have carried over. So we want to be careful how we think of that. One of the things that the researchers talk about is if a person had drowned, for example, in a past life, they may not, as a child, want to get in a bathtub. They may have a phobia, for water, and that's pretty common. And so if they go back and can trace that and get the child back in touch with whatever happened to them, then that can heal that phobia. And maybe some of us have had something like that we could relate to something in the past. But I think for the most part, we want to stay focused on this life. As far as I'm concerned, this is enough, to have to deal with. There's plenty here. So does karma factor into the way our life unfolds? Should we think of negative conditions as karmic payback for something negative we may have done in the past? I think if we do, that I hope that we can break that thought, because it's not always too healthy to have. A fair number of people in the West have adopted this Eastern concept. Mainstream Christianity's version of karma is the sin and punishment model. Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? So the question that was raised there comes from not necessarily the Christian thinking, but that is tied. The whole idea of sin is tied into the condition of our life. If we've got a problem, a lot of times if we have, I've had people ask me that have ended up with some disease, what do you think I did to bring this on? What did I do to deserve this? You know, what might I have done? And maybe they'll list a few things that they possibly could have done to bring it about. And we never really know if that's true. We never really know if we're paying for something that we have done in the past. We can, I guess, put out a pretty good argument that would say we are, but then what? What do we do? How do we go back and change what has happened in the past? What's important is that which has the greatest impact on the quality of our life is that which occupies our mind at this moment. Whether we embrace the concept of karma or the more traditional sin and punishment model, it is our faith in either of these ideas that makes them seem true to us. So it's what's on the scale now. And I'm talking about now in this very moment. What are we carrying around with us? Where are we focused at this moment? And I call that, and it's called present mind action. It's the most influential use of the mind, is what we're doing with the mind now. Now, we may be thinking about something of the past. We may be thinking about something someone has done to us in the past. And that's a trick to deal with sometimes, because what I have found, this just happened a couple of Sundays ago, I was talking about how we let go of things, then we go downstairs, we're having our cookies and whatever, and we start talking about a split we had in the church. And I realized I had not totally let go of that. It brought up some feelings that I had. And what we will end up doing is reliving those scenarios. And we're not even there. And what good does it do to relive them? It doesn't do any good. It's just a knee-jerk reaction that we have. And maybe some type of justification or whatever. But it's not what happened, but what is happening in the present. That's what gets us. What we're doing with our mind now. So I can think of people I don't care for, that we've parted company and had not such a pleasant party. And I can think of that, I can relive it, but what does it do? It brings me down the only place that I can be in this now moment. And that's doesn't hurt anybody else but myself. And so in a sense, you could think of that as a karmic reaction, but it's not something that's happening to me. It's something that I am triggering myself. And so we find ourselves doing that, and we say, this is what's on my scale right now. It has nothing to do with what happened. It has everything to do with what is happening in this now moment, as Diane was singing. So it's present mind action. In the case of the man born blind, Jesus drew attention to the importance of that which occupies our mind in the moment. He said it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but the works of God might be made manifest in him. How we use our mind in the present has more impact than how we used it in the past. I was listening again to an interview with Anita Marjoni, and you may be familiar with her already. The book Dying to Be Me is one of the best near-death stories that's out there. It's a phenomenal. She was diagnosed with cancer and had no, prognosis was she was going to die the night she was in the hospital, according to everybody. And she did. She had a near-death experience, but she had this awareness of herself as a whole, complete soul. And that so much of how she had approached her life in the past was out of fear. She was very afraid to live, and she was very afraid she would not please people, and not. She was, real concerned with all of that, trying to make things happen, and she in a positive way. She is Indian. She's lives in Hong Kong, but she is culturally she comes from an Indian family, and so when she was very young, her family arranged a marriage. And she did not want an arranged marriage because in an arranged marriage, apparently you can't work, you're going to stay home and do housework and whatever, and she wanted a career. And so at the last minute, she backed out of the marriage. And she felt horrible about it because her family basically was shamed and she was shunned from the Indian community, and just felt very bad for many years. Then she had this near-death experience, and it showed her a whole new perspective of who she was, which you can get the same thing in meditation. You don't necessarily have to die to see this. But she experienced a larger context of herself. And as she went about the country after she had this near-death experience, she's been all over the world telling about it. She's now very famous. But she said she realizes that where she took on the guilt of ending that arranged marriage, she actually ended up getting married to somebody that she fell in love with. But how many lives she helped, people of her own culture, Indian girls, who were also in the same situation that did not want to be put into an arranged marriage. She was encouraging them to listen to themselves. You don't have to do this, but you have to pay the price if you make the choice not to do it. But she met her father when she had died, when she went over, and her father was there, and he was the one that was so upset with her in life. But in death, he was totally supportive of her and said, you got to go back and you got to be true to yourself and all of that. So she had a very different relationship with him outside of the body. But it was very impactful, and she has definitely changed a lot of lives. But she felt that she had sinned and that she was to blame for something. Now, we've all had that kind of feeling, I'm sure. We don't quite live up to something or other. And we're not living to our full capacity. We're not allowing ourselves to do that. And maybe we are people pleasers. Maybe there's things that we're dealing with that is not really true to us. But we're playing a role that we don't really believe in. But what's interesting on the question of who sinned, we do not want to sidestep the consequences of past actions. Sometimes we do need to clean things up. There may be a bit of cleanup required, but suppose Jesus had answered the question by naming the sinner as the man or the parents of the man. We would know where to point the finger of blame, but we would have no solution to the man's condition of blindness. So that's why Jesus said, who sinned, this man or his parents? He's saying it doesn't matter. That's not the right question. This is an opportunity to put something else on the scale. And so he approached the man and he said, your sins are forgiven or something, and freed the man of the blindness. And that's the thing, we always want to point the finger at whoever it is that made us miserable. And you know the saying, if you got one finger pointed out, you've got three pointing back at yourself, and that's really true. It's what is on the scale at this moment. You know, that's our thinking. And I, above or equal with all of you, know how difficult that is to do, to want to try to resolve something by saying, yes, I was right and they were wrong, and that'll make me feel better. But then I'll think about it again tomorrow or another week from now or another year from now. It's still there. So it's not really resolved. And in that sense, I'm carrying it around. It has a karmic hold on me in that regard. But does that mean karma is a law? Does it mean that karma is something I have no say in? And the answer to that question is no. What difference does it make who sinned? This is an opportunity to put something else on the scale. And will I take that opportunity? I will take it if I understand what it means to do that and how freeing that can be. And what I find myself doing is I go through cycles where I will seek the blame for somebody else, put the blame on somebody else. It doesn't make me feel any better, but I understand what happened, and I understand how things unfolded, and I understand that they seem to have made a mistake that I don't agree with. They would look at me and say the same thing. So we're both in a bind. How are we going to fix that? And so you stop and think, well, what am I putting on the scale right now? I'm trying to find blame. I'm trying to justify something. And maybe I can. Maybe I can say it was the child that sinned or the parents that sinned, so we know where to point the finger. But that pointed finger is a weight on the scale. It's what's on the scale now. And so it doesn't do me or anyone else any good. And you all know this, I know this, but we keep having this knee-jerk reaction. We need to blame. We need to find who is responsible for me feeling the way I feel. And the only answer that really makes sense is I'm somehow making that choice. And I can change that. I guess that's what the good news is. I cannot change what happened, but I can change what is happening. I can change what I'm putting on the scale. And that, to me, is the extent of karma, even if something happened in another life that I can do absolutely nothing about. And it's not to say that there aren't steps we can take to get in touch with, energy that's going around that we don't know how to stop. We don't know how to get out of that cycle. Sometimes it helps to talk with somebody. These people brought this problem to Jesus. Let's talk about this. Who sinned, this man or his parents? Let's answer that question. How do you approach this? And he approached it in a way they had never thought about. And that's really what we want. The way we have thought about is we go in this circle and we never resolve it. Even though we're satisfied that we know who to blame. But that's what's on the scale. And so we don't really resolve the problem. Because every time we think about it, we'll relive that whole thing, and we're no better off. So watch your step. If you are a hiker, you will occasionally find yourself walking over rocky ground. You know how important it is to be mindful of every step. Likewise, when you walk over the rocky terrain of a life condition, be mindful of every mental and emotional step you take. And when is the only place you can take that step? It's in the now moment. How are we using our faculties of mind right now? And again, because we have this wonderful gift of imagination that can shoot off in any direction or all directions at once, we're kind of plagued with that ability. So it's not always easy, and we have to remind ourselves. that now is what's on the scale. Let's look at it now. You are here because you are here. Why do we have problems with people? You know how you got on your rocky patch of trail. You wanted the hike. How did you get to this rocky patch in your life? You wanted to live. You did nothing wrong. This is simply a stretch of the path you are on. This is your opportunity to see the works of God manifest. Now, I say this a lot, that we often think that the whole spiritual journey is about getting to a point where we'll never have another negative reaction. That somebody can do something to us, like nail us to a cross, and we can forgive them because they know not what they do. I don't think I could do that quite yet. I can't even do it if they just say something, let alone nail me to a cross. But we want to understand that there's going to be problems with living life. We're in a body. We have all of these spiritual faculties, and we have a blinder on. And we're not calling them into the forefront all the time because they are our full faculties are not functioning in a way that we see them. When we step out of the body, according to what most people say, that changes. You see in ways you've never seen, you hear in ways you've never heard, you know things you can never know otherwise. So being in this body, we're shut down, and we have problems in this life. We have a physical body, and it gives us trouble. Other people give us trouble. We have all kinds of issues. So to think that we are ever going to reach a point where that stops, that's probably one of the negatives of the spiritual path that people are dealing with. Is I think that someday I'm going to rise above all of this and never have another negative reaction. And if I have a negative reaction, it's because I haven't learned enough. Well, if you take a hike on a trail and you run into a rocky patch, you don't blame yourself for that. You wanted to do the hike. And so you've got this little place you got to just watch every step. You got to watch it closer. But that's not a negative thing. It's just a good common sense response to have. Be careful where you step. And that's where we are in life. We go through life. There's going to be stuff that happens. Stuff happens, as the bumper sticker says. I'm kind of cleaning it up a little. But it does. And I have been doing this for over 40 some years, and it still is happening. I would think that, you'd advance far enough where you don't have to deal with some of the stuff, but you do. It just continues to happen. And maybe I'm slow, I don't know. But everybody around me, same thing. I watch people go through things all the time. But so things are going to happen. What's on the scale? What am I putting on the scale right now? Am I reacting? Am I seeking blame? Am I saying, why am I going through this rocky patch? What have I done wrong, or what have they done wrong? And Jesus said, that's not the issue. The issue is, this is an opportunity to show the works of God, which means it's an opportunity to change your mind. Change the way you think of what is going on. Change the reaction that you may be having at this moment from negative to something else. And again, I know the difficulty of doing this. But if you don't do it right away, just keep it in mind and keep working toward that until you get where it's okay. Well, I got a call this week about from our real estate agent that the seller was having not necessarily cold feet, but had issues and wants to talk on the phone. Well, I had a reaction to that. Just thinking, why can't we just do this? Why can't we just keep going and not have these hitches? Well, it's not really a hitch. It was more of a hitch in my mind. And the meeting is tomorrow at 10 o'clock, so keep me in mind for that. But I think we're going to resolve it all. But that's put something on the scale. You put something on the scale. It's a reaction. Why is this happening? Why can't we just do it? So it's something extra. And it is stressful when you do that to yourself. And so a couple hours later, that was resolved in me. I was able to let that go. And I said to myself, we're saying this or something better. So let's say that. This or something better. If it doesn't work out, it's probably not supposed to. And I was able to let that go, to put something new on the scale, this or something better. It's a lot better thing to have on your scale, I guarantee it. So lay down the baggage. When you think about it, you can only take one step at a time. Lay down the baggage of karma you may be carrying and take your next step mindfully and gratefully. How easy is that? As I always say, it's a lot easier than not doing it, but we often don't do it. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. If you'd like to help support this ministry, just click the donate card at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Your financial support means a lot to us. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in Independent Unity, and have a wonderful week.